This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of Resident Evil, more specifically the Spencer Mansion, what some would say is the coziest location within the entire Resident Evil universe. And that makes a lot of sense. I would say that the Spencer Mansion is just one of the big reasons that Resident Evil just really took off, especially the Resident Evil HD remake, because there is just a special feeling that I get walking around the Spencer Mansion that no other Resident Evil game even comes close to touching. None of the remakes, none of the originals, not even probably the closest game to the Resident Evil remake, Resident Evil 0. Even though it's still in a mansion, it's missing a lot of the key components. And I figured out what makes the coziness of the Spencer Mansion just so gratifying and so satisfying, and feeling just a weird kind of safe but scary within the Spencer Mansion. And the first thing about that is there's no real randomness to the Spencer Mansion. When you think about the newer Resident Evil remakes, like more specifically I would say 2 really highlights this, is there's a lot of chaos within the remake, because unlike the original ones where there are load screens in between, each individual room, in the remakes, Capcom is able to eliminate the need for obvious load screens, meaning when you walk into the police precinct, main hallway, it's one, you don't have to load when you go into the hallway to the left or whatever. Just one big map. And there's a lot of pros to that, and the pro to that is it speeds up gameplay, it makes it more immersive, but one other thing is it allows the zombies to freely roam Raccoon City Police Department as they see fit, as they just, want to track you. As you, the player, makes noises, the zombies are going to be hunting you, more or less. And while that is cool, it adds a lot of variation between play sets. Playthroughs, there is a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? It just makes sometimes the game of Resident Evil 2 Remake seem less appealing to play. Maybe I'm just at an age where I just want to kind of do the same actions over and over again and just feel good. What I mean by that is when you play Resident Evil, the remake, the first one, every time you load a room, if you don't kill that zombie or whatever, that zombie is gonna load in the exact same place. The dogs, the Cerberuses are gonna load in the exact same place, the hunters, whatever. And it can allow you to sort of plan your routes accordingly. If you know how to hug the hallway correctly, if you know how to bait that zombie to grab Jill or Chris, whatever, you know how you can quickly maneuver around it. And because each room is so set, the remake, Resident Evil remake, feels more like like a board game or something, like something that more takes a precise precision skill to get around, versus something like the Resident Evil Remake 2, Resident Evil 2 Remake, again, where it's more reaction time, it's responding to the craziness around you. Versus the first one, it's more of it's not so much memorization, but if you've played Resident Evil, if you're like me and you've played the first Resident Evil remake enough, you basically know the Spencer Mansion like the back of your hand a little bit. I'm not going to say I can tell you every room, I could draw a map of it by memory, but you get the game in my hand, I'm going to be able to seamlessly navigate it. And not only seamlessly navigate it, but also anticipate where the enemies are, so I know, when to pull out the shotgun, when to grab the grenade launcher, and whatnot. But again, with the remake, it's just, less like that. There's just more chaos. And then the second thing about the remake is, even though the rooms are static, every time you enter them, the setup is going to be the same. You can actually, realistically, it feels like, clear the Spencer Mansion. Whereas with the Raccoon City Police Department, or with 3, with just Raccoon City in general, it just doesn't seem as feasible to be actually able to like feel like I can get rid of every single zombie safely. Where again in the HD remaster, or I guess the remake of the first one, I feel like there's enough ammo. I know enough of the tricks to be able to, maybe decapitate all the zombies in one shot with the shotgun, or burn, get them to fall together so they all burn so you can eliminate the Crimson Heads. Regardless, it just feels like there's enough ammo, there's enough supplies for you to actually clear certain sections, maybe not the entire Spencer Mansion, but you can clear certain sections of it to give yourself that breathing room. And sometimes within Resident Evil, that's all you need, is just that one, maybe 2 room stretch where you just know you can go, you can feel safe, there's no enemies. And it might take a little bit longer to get where you need to go, but again, if you know where your safe routes are, you can avoid a lot of the big danger within Resident Evil. But in the other Resident Evils, whether it's just too many zombies or the fact that zombies from previous areas will then migrate to the new empty areas, you're just not going to be able to feel that same level of security. So it's just so funny that such a location, a setting that's supposed to be so threatening, can just feel so safe. Another thing that the Spencer Mansion does really well is just the general atmosphere. The pitter-patter of the rain, the soft bolts of lightning that just vibrate through the halls, and then if you're in a room with a window, you'll see the flash of lightning on like Jill or Chris's face, and it's just the color palettes that they use are so cozy and just make you feel a certain way, whether it's terror, whether it's safety, because again, it's just so funny that I guess it depends on how much experience you have with Resident Evil 1 will kind of dictate how comfortable you feel in that game. Because I remember the first time playing it, maybe 10 years old, and I was terrified. I don't even think I could figure out how to get the Book of Death, that you had to look at the arrow and then insert it into the gravestone. I don't even think I got that far, and I was just too scared to walk around the Spencer Mansion. I mean, those zombies were just eating my bullets, but now as an adult, I'm running through it in like 3 hours less if I wanted to. Rarely do I actually want to speedrun it like that, but the point is, once you've played it enough, you can just feel like you've mastered the Spencer Mansion, and then what was supposed to be so scary can be transformed into almost like a comfort escape place. Again, I just love hanging out in certain rooms of the Spencer Mansion. Not even just the save rooms, even though the save rooms are peak atmosphere. But again, there's just certain locations, and not even just so much locations like specific rooms, but it's more just specific maybe camera angles that just do so much. I feel like that could be a fun video, ranking every single camera angle in the Resident Evil remake. I'm going to have to put that in the back burner, because people are just going to eat that kind of video. People love ranked videos in general, so why not just arbitrarily rank each individual different, what do they call it, pre-rendered cuts, background and whatnot. And you can't discount how beautiful those pre-rendered backgrounds are. I mean, how old is at least the non-HD remake at this point? I mean, the one that came out on the GameCube, 24 years old. I'm going to guess it came out in 2001, 2002. And I haven't played the GameCube specific version in quite a while, just because, I mean, the HD remake of Resident Evil 1 and 0 are on sale for like $5 a piece, it seems like every other week. So I've had no need to dig up a probably way more expensive copy of that game. But I bet it still looks good. Even if it doesn't, we have the HD remakes, and sure, maybe sometimes the models themselves look a little bit weird, like the model of Chris and Jill, sometimes, depending on the room, look very separate from each other. It's kind of like in the old Disney cartoons or in the old Scooby-Doo, you could always tell what item in the background was actually gonna maybe be the door, the secret door switch or whatever, because it was the only object in the background that had a thick outline. But I don't think it ruins the feeling too much. And again, I think there's just so much fun lighting, effects and whatnot. I don't know. I guess I'm not a snob when it comes to these kind of things. It's just insane when I go online and look at people's opinions on games, or like what they will ding games for, and and maybe I don't even understand what frame rate is, or I don't know. I just know that I have a pretty high tolerance for supposed issues that a lot of other hardcore gamers have, but that's not what this is about. This is just a video that is supposed to be praising the amazing design of the Spencer Mansion. And again, it feels safe, it feels cozy, the music, and it's fun that you don't linger too long within the Spencer Mansion, but you always sort of come back. What's really sad in Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 is you can't really develop that same sort of connection maybe with the environment. Within Resident Evil 3, it just seems like you're going from location to location to location, so you really don't feel a sense of like being grounded in a single place. Within Resident Evil 2, yeah, you do spend a very good bulk of the game within the Raccoon City Police Department, but very soon, once you enter the sewers, the police department is a distant memory. You might go back to maybe grab an extra item or two, but for the most part, the moment you enter the sewers, you say goodbye to the police department, and then you enter the Umbrella Lab, and you can't even go back. That's already the point of no return. And sure, you can't go back to the Spencer Mansion once you do enter the lab within Resident Evil, but that's such a small part of the game. I mean, the end lab sequence is probably like an eighth, a tenth of the game, whereas I'd say in like Resident Evil 2, the underground lab is more like a fifth of the game maybe. And it's so much fun how within the Spencer Mansion, and you can't really do this if you leave like you do in Resident Evil 2 or 3, but it's kind of like one of those classic, Metroidvania roguelike games where you have access to a decent amount of the mansion from the beginning. I would say like once you get the Book of Death, a lot of the mansion opens up with, I want to say the sword key is the one you get first. And then from that point on, you just have to keep finding more keys, more items to open up more. So you find a lot of these rooms, you find a lot of these roadblocks at the beginning that will open up later on, and that's just kind of a fun feeling because you want to go like at the very beginning of Resident Evil Remake. Such a distinct memory of first playing it was just trying to get the fake key or the key out of that the armor key from the very beginning, where if you remove the key, the spiky shield guy will come down the hallway. It was just really fun that they tease you, that Capcom teases the player right at the beginning with something that you really don't get until I think you get back from the whole Aqua ring and whatnot and all the way back. So it just makes the player hungry to explore, and then the moment you do get an item like a key, you just want to go back and explore and find all those rooms that were locked off to you before. So that's just another fun thing, is because the Spencer Mansion prohibits players from entering certain places, it just makes you hungry to explore those. And I think that's more for like new players. For old players, I mean, I don't remember the last time I probably entered every single room within the Spencer Mansion, because it's like you know what you need. Very, structured. I don't even mean to like speed run this game, but I feel like whenever I play the original Resident Evil Remake, I'm just beelining it to every single room that I need to go, because it's just hard to like get out of the ingrainedness of the, what's the word I'm looking, just the efficient routes. So I'm just so glad that Resident Evil, that Capcom put so much love into the Spencer Mansion. And I know there's a lot of speculation on what Resident Evil game Capcom is planning on remaking next. I would say the big three contenders. Well, there's not really much left, but I would say, let's see, what do they have left? They have 5, 0, and and Code Veronica. They have 5, 0, Code Veronica, and then the Resident Evil, the original one. Sure, there's 6, but I feel like that's just too soon. I mean, they're not going to go around and making 7 or remaking 7 already, right? So there's a lot of speculation on what could come next, whether it's Code Veronica, whether it's 0. I would say they're probably going to leave Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil, for last. I think that would be very poetic to end this new generation of remakes with the game that really brought Resident Evil, or I would say maintained Resident Evil's place within the survival horror genre. I know at least introduced it to me. Resident Evil was introduced to me through the original Resident Evil remake, and I would imagine a lot of people born around my age were probably first introduced to that. I know it's not the case for a lot of people, but again, I'm just so glad that Capcom is putting so much love and taking so many risks with these remakes. I know that not everyone is a fan of the Capcom Resident Evil remake style, but I love the fact that we can either enjoy the classic OG Resident Evils or this new reimagining of the story. Yeah, it's disappointing, like in Resident Evil 2, that you miss out on some enemies. There's no zapping, but it's still better than, I would say, something like Metal Gear Solid Delta, which just plans to be a 1-to-1 remake. So when Capcom does remake Resident Evil 1, though, I wonder if they're still gonna be able to maintain that cozy atmosphere, that really safe but scary, that mystical but cold feeling that the Spencer Mansion was able to house. Like, I just feel like there was like a lot of contradictions within the Spencer Mansion, but I'm afraid that the Resident Evil remakes kind of take some of that away, and I'm afraid that that's gonna happen with the Resident Evil, if they remake the first one. I guess I have to have faith, though, because like I said, I can still enjoy the original, so if they want to bring a little bit more danger to the first Spencer Mansion, maybe it needs it. I would love to have Lisa being one of those, an invincible hunter type enemies. I forget what they call them, but that would be a lot of fun. So I guess I will have to wait and see with the rate that Capcom is churning out these remakes, though. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a remake of the first Resident Evil within the next, 5 years. Again, there's not too much left. I'm already shocked that they made the Resident Evil 4 remake, so there's not much left to do controversial. I don't think people were already mad at how they treated the Resident Evil 3 remake. So, again, it's good. I hope they do use the first Resident Evil remake for last, because I need Capcom to learn all of their lessons first. And I feel like each remake that they do, they take on, each remake that Capcom does attempt to make, they are learning something. I think I want to say the second, Resident Evil 2 was the first remake of the new generation, the post-RE engine remake, I guess we'll call it. And people loved it. They were very receptive. They were sad about some things, but overall I would say smashing success. If anybody who's a fan of Resident Evil, Capcom, they're going to know that anybody who's a fan of Resident Evil, Capcom, are going to be disappointed about the third game missing out so much. The fourth game, I would say, walks a good balance of that, where they took away some stuff, they added some stuff, they kept some of that stuff they took out just to put it into the DLC. So I think Resident Evil 4 is a step in the right direction. We'll have to see what Capcom does, though, with these next ones, see how they continue to implement these. But the problem with these next ones is I wouldn't say 5, 0, or Code Veronica are that celebrated of games. meaning that they can really only improve something like Resident Evil 0. You know, if they can just stop all the backtracking, that's gonna be better. If they can just make Resident Evil 5's like AI a little bit more responsive, that's gonna be better. If they can just make it so players can't basically get themselves into an unwinnable situation in Code Veronica, that's gonna be better. Whereas with the original Resident Evil, just like 3, there's a lot of places where Capcom can go wrong. So only time will tell, but I know I'm going to be waiting excitedly. This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of entertainment.